On July 28, 1955, over 400 students from Kyohoku Junior High School in Mie Prefecture went to nearby Nakagawara Coast for the final day of their swimming practice. The students were split into several groups, and for the final test, had to swim within a designated area marked by poles, and then return to the shore. However, shortly after the test began, close to 100 girls suddenly started drowning. In the end, 36 died and 13 suffered injuries. What went on that day that led to such a massive loss of life at once? Let's set the stage. The year was 1955, roughly a decade after the end of the war. Few schools were equipped with swimming pools, so swimming lessons generally took place in nearby rivers or beaches. Kyohoku Junior High was no different, and their lessons took place at the nearby Nakagawara Coast, located roughly 300 meters from the mouth of the Ano River and facing Ise Bay. This was not the first time swimming lessons had taken place here, nor was it even the first time that year. Lessons had been ongoing since July 18th, so by the 28th, they were well over a week into their practice. July 28th was the final test day. 401 students hit the beach, were split into boys and girls groups, and then told to get into the water to adjust to the temperature first. It was a fine Japanese summer day, and the temperature was over 30 degrees Celsius. The sea was perfectly calm and clear, making it the perfect day for swimming. Numerous teachers were on hand to assist the students and keep an eye out for anyone who might be struggling, as well as the principal and vice principal. By all accounts, everything had been done perfectly by the book and no corners were cut. The safety of several hundred students was on the line, after all. So then, what went wrong? Designated areas were set up for the boys and the girls. Large bamboo poles were erected in the water to mark off the swim zones, with the girls' area set to the north and the boys a short distance away to the south. They were the only school taking lessons that day, so the area was expanded slightly further than usual. The swim zones were set up around 10 a.m. that morning, and it was low tide. There was no wind, and the sea was perfectly calm and flat. However, some of the students who set up the bamboo marking posts noticed that the tide was flowing from south to north, in contrast to the previous day, and notified the teachers as such. Otherwise, nothing appeared to be out of the ordinary, however, so the test continued as scheduled. The bamboo poles were set at a distance of 10-meter intervals. Depending on which pole a student could swim to, another waiting student would then hand them a flag, designating how far they had made it, and then they would return to the shore. If they reached the second pole, for instance, they would receive a flag designating they had swum 20 meters. Roughly 200 female students got into the water and started swimming. Only a few minutes later, half of them started drowning in the northeast section of the beach. There was a teacher among them, and she also started drowning. Naturally, other swimmers nearby noticed the commotion and immediately went to their aid. Staff members, third graders, and members of the public swam for the girls and helped who they could. The school principal also jumped into the water, but was then also swept north. He noticed even more students struggling outside the designated area, so he helped who he could and called for more help. Several doctors and nurses soon arrived on the scene, and a police officer who just happened to be driving by also noticed the commotion. He quickly alerted several hospitals in the area, and riot police from the Mie Police Prefectural Headquarters were also dispatched to help, along with a medical team from the Self-Defense Forces and several government officials. Local fishermen set out in their boats to assist, and by 12:15 that day, another 13 doctors and 8 nurses arrived on the scene. By 3 p.m, even more doctors and nurses from other hospitals arrived, and students were still being treated at the scene and taken to various hospitals around the city. In the end, 36 died, and 13 others suffered complications from swallowing so much seawater. Rumours immediately began to spread about what really happened. There were reports that the students had been attacked by vengeful ghosts that had tried to pull them into the water. One of the survivors reportedly said that she saw a group of women in the water wearing old women's work pants and hoods who were beckoning them further out to sea. Others claimed to feel hands under the water pulling them down. This made locals uneasy because Sioux City had been bombed terribly during the war, and many of those who died were buried near the mouth of the Yano River. There were even claims that the bombings had happened 10 years ago to the day that the students were in the water. Had it truly been ghosts that caused so many people to drown at once? Some of the students certainly felt so. Others, however, were more practical. Just like the third graders who set up the bamboo poles had informed the teachers, many of those who survived claimed that the seemingly calm waters suddenly swept them north and they were simply unable to fight it. The current was very sudden and very strong. Other students reported that the water, which had initially been only 1 meter deep, about waist height, suddenly rose up to their chins, about 1.5 meters high, meaning there was a sudden swell in the water as well. A strong, unseen current and a sudden swell making the waters deeper did not bode well for so many bodies in the water, and as a result, numerous students drowned. Yet the ghostly rumours refused to go away. Research uncovered that there really was a bombing in Sioux City on July 28th and 29th in 1945, exactly 1 decade prior to the swim test. Numerous people died, but they were unable to uncover evidence that they were buried by the mouth of the river, and no remains were ever found there either. Several survivors insisted long after the incident that they saw the spirits of these women who died in the bombings in the water, yet this became muddied when even later reports from the same women then claimed that they never said any such thing, and the stories were actually just fabricated by journalists at the time. Regardless of whether a few journalists were trying to sell some more magazines or not, the fact remained that 36 people did die that day, and, in the eyes of the law, someone had to be held responsible for the horrific tragedy. The school principal, vice principal, and head of physical education were all charged with manslaughter, although they were ultimately acquitted. The tragic accident was put down to a sudden and abnormal current, but in the end, the actual truth and the circumstances of how such a current may have come about remained unknown. Testimony from survivors all supported this theory. Many claimed to feel the sand slipping away beneath their feet in the water. Others detailed how it became much easier to swim north, whilst swimming south was a struggle. Those who tried to swim back to shore found themselves being dragged further away, and those who tried to help those drowning also felt themselves getting pushed by invisible forces in the water. Other testimony at the trial also spoke of the sudden rise in water levels. One student claimed that the water rose from only 1 meter to 1.5 meters in 5 minutes. One student who tried to stand near the bamboo marker pole found herself suddenly completely underwater, despite being able to stand by it earlier. This same testimony was repeated by numerous students who suddenly found the water was far, far deeper than it had been earlier. This was reported by several fishermen to be a rather common occurrence in the area, made worse by the fact that it appeared to be concentrated in one small area. The boys swimming to the south nearby didn't notice anything wrong, and it wasn't until all the commotion that they realized the girls, just a short distance north of them, were drowning. After the incident, the beach was thereafter closed to public swimming. Pools were also installed in elementary and junior high schools all over the country so that such an incident might never happen again. A statue of a goddess was also erected 1 year later called the Guardian of the Sea. You can even visit her on Google Maps if you are so inclined. It was a terrible tragedy in which all the right precautions were taken, and yet people still lost their lives. It was thanks to this incident that most schools now have their own pools, so that a repeat may never happen again. But the eeriness of the tale and the very sudden nature of it has led many to cling to the rumours of ghosts, even to this day. Was it really the spirits of those who died in the water trying to drag more people down with them, or simply a freak accident of nature that nobody could have foreseen? What do you guys think about this one? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you again next time.